Nicola, great to see
Okay.
you, and thank you for making a bit of time. Well, staying up late because you're down under, aren't you? And it's the evening where you are, and it's the morning where I am. So thank you for making the effort to come on the podcast and tell us about what you're doing because it's pretty interesting stuff. So I want to start by picking up something that you said to me a little while ago. You said, I think that women need to get out of their own way. And I think you were referring to kind of female entrepreneurs at the time. So women need to get out of their own way. Like, what's the story there? Tell us about what you mean by that.
Oh, hopefully there's no haters in out there, but I've been having lots of these conversations, particularly, I'm part of many AI groups, and, a solo female founder, and there's not many of us. And we're often, we talk about the lack of female funding. There's when you go to a tech conference, it's one of the only places where, there's not a queue for the women's bathroom. It's like women in historically have been, on the outer. Uh, with the AI boom, I see this significant opportunity at almost a historical moment where women can actually be part of the future because the barriers to entry are so low. You can get a free ChatGPT account. You can self-educate. You can build a business, with one person. So you don't need funding, but yet still women aren't participating in the same level as men. And we even talk about bias, in some of the LLMs, and it's like, well, the only way we can reduce that bias and the only way we can, level out in terms of tech participation is being part of the conversation, being part of the solution. And yes, it's really difficult, but it's otherwise we're going to keep having the same conversation, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, where it's all, women don't get funding, women don't get this. Yeah, I think sometimes we have to take responsibility and actually just
Yeah.
be
Get stuck
be
in,
brave and
lean
get
in,
stuck in.
lean in. As
Lead it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that, and it seems to me to be a perfectly sensible way forward, really, because the more women that do lean in, the better the situation will become because they'll have more say, there'll be more funding, and it will take time. But I think that's your point is well made. I mean, there'll be a lot of people that will be annoyed by that comment, I'm sure, but I think it's well made actually because I can't see another way forward around that particularly.
No, and there's I'm part of many women tech groups. And, it's even about how we show up in boardrooms, how we show up, in the sort of tech male oriented conversations. And, sometimes we just have to put our egos aside or our grudges or whatever it is, and play the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a bit about your business because you've got quite an interesting business model. I mean, you do a lot of work with challenger brands, if you like, that are up and coming, that are trying to disrupt the market a little bit. I mean, just explain why you decided to work with them in particular. I mean, because there's lots of places lots of sectors you could focus market research on. I mean, why did you pick that sector particularly?
For a few reasons. One, that for so long that they've been almost locked out of the market research world, for various reasons, cost being a big one. So it's unaffordable, but also I feel like inaccessible. So, we've got our big players, our Kantars, our Ipsoses, GFKs. And for a challenger brand who's never done market research before, and many of our clients, when they work with us, it's literally the first time they've ever done independent research beyond asking their, friends and family what they think about that product, or just relying on those early sales or product market fit. So we try and make it, we have a model where we use independent researchers, highly experienced, 15, 20 years, and we bring them together in a way that will, handhold them through the brief and the proposal, but also work, with them often at the founder level. So the founder's actually still quite involved at that stage, and it might be the founder and a marketing person, and they're trying to navigate this brand, whether it's into another market, rolling out another product feature, or simply understanding who on earth is buying their products. They're like, wow, we're making sales, we don't know who to. So, it's a way for them to be able to, get closer to their customers, but also make decisions, finally based on real data, versus kind of the gut feel that we've often seen with these founders in the past.
Yeah. I certainly get the value of good market research. Understanding, who doesn't want to understand their customers? It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? What's different about working with challenger brands in particular? Because most companies, I think, would say understanding my customers better is a good thing. What's different about challengers? Not so much the fact that they're in a different place, but what's different about working with them? Do you have to work with them in a different way? Do you have to, you mentioned hand holding. How does is it different with those brands?
Yeah, often look, you've got to admire some of these challenger brands.
Yeah.
They've been working, like they've been in the market sometimes 10 years. And so they've done an incredible job, just off, whether it's a strong founder, a strong vision, a fantastic product. But it's almost when they need to start growing up, into that next level. And suddenly it's like, okay, we really need to know who we're up against. We need, dare I say it, so I was saying growing up, data, they might suddenly have a board, and the chairperson's going, well, come on, who are you competing against? But what I also love about it is there's still hunger there, there's still passion, and I think that's it when you've been working, with the P&Gs and the Unilevers, in market research. I'm sure there's advertisers, especially with CPG or FMCG brands. It's like, do we really need another, crisp flavor, or do we really need, another sort of SKU of XYZ? Whereas with challenger brands, it's kind of this grassroots, they love what they do. As I said, the founder's still quite involved. So that passion really runs through. So you actually get to do really interesting, exciting research, which, especially when, after you've been doing 15, 20 years of it, when you can come up with something new and different, disruptive, then you get to share that passion with them. And what we also love, especially with our clients, is that we end up going on the journey with them. So we'll come in, they're past startup, they're just starting to scale up. But then we're with them for, like, we've got clients that are 5 years on with us, third, fourth project down. We've got an auction house that's just bought another big auction house. And, one example is Xero. We work with Xero globally, and in the US, they're still a relatively, they're working hard to go up against QuickBooks, but you'd call them a challenger brand in the US, whereas outside, especially in Australia and New Zealand, they're the dominant brand. So even one brand can both be a challenger brand and a dominant brand.
Yeah. And let me just ask you about something we were talking about another thing we were talking about a little while ago. We were talking about the impact of AI and customers using AI to do stuff themselves rather than to source it with, people like yourselves. Just give us a sense of how, and you would, in my view, you would expect to see more of that in challenger brands. Perhaps I'm wrong about that, but that's my perception. What's your take on that issue at the moment? How is that playing out in your world?
Well, we get a little nervous. So I think AI has, it's got a lot of promise, and it's, as we know, it's moving at pace, but there's still a lot it doesn't know, or doesn't know how to do accurately. And if you don't know what you don't know, then, as ChatGPT, it's so convincing. Claude, it tells, it reinforces, what you already know. So if you're going in using AI to find something innovative, a new idea, a customer insight that's, nobody else has ever thought of, and it's going to help your brand disrupt the entire market, please don't go into AI and think it's going to do that for you. And this is what we're finding is, I call it kind of the vanillification of marketing or insights, because don't think that you're the only brand that is using AI to find out what customers think. I also find, if you haven't done the hard work of actually talking in person with your customers, or really understanding that category on the ground, you've got no human benchmark. So if you're going into, any AI tool, and whatever it spits out, you don't know if it's true or not, because you've got no human real world comparison. So, I'm all for using AI to help expand or refine, or maybe go a bit deeper, or at least to provide context for your queries. But yeah, if you haven't done that hard work up front, then AI is not going to solve it for you.
I mean, it strikes me, it's a very interesting point you're making. It strikes me that AI is good for telling you what the conventional wisdom is, which is fine. Nothing wrong with a bit of conventional wisdom. But actually, in terms of differentiation, in terms of competitive advantage, actually what you want is the kind of counterintuitive stuff, isn't it? The stuff that other people don't think is relevant or interesting, but actually it does resonate with customers, or a particular segment of customers. And I think that's it's a very interesting. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out actually over the next few years, I think. Yeah. Let me ask you about.
Oh, absolutely. And, you think about the Malcolm Gladwell book.
Sorry, after you. I interrupted. Go on.
Internet. That's all right. I think it was my internet was having a little lag. No, I was just saying about the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers. And that, yes, that's where true innovation comes from. And so, yeah, AI doesn't have outliers.
No, that's right. That's a well-made point, and I think that's one of the limitations of AI. Although they'll probably figure out a way around that at some point, but at the moment, that's one of the limitations for sure. Let me ask you about you, and
Yeah.
why did you decide? I mean, because you've been an entrepreneur for quite a long time, you've got a very successful global business. I mean, tell us about why you decided to become an entrepreneur, and then we'll perhaps talk a bit about your journey.
So, my dad, had run his business for many, many years, and that those kind of values of freedom and independence, I've had those forever. But I think I remember the start of it, and I like to say I was read the OG 4 Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, and never looked back. So, not that I was expecting to work 4 hours a week, but I just loved his whole philosophy around, finding freedom, outsourcing, finding a muse. And that's what I was talking about, that passion. And, he really was kind of ahead of his time. And so, yeah, I went freelanced for 12 years, and then started Insights-Exchange, and launched March 2020, which is hilarious. But I'd make a terrible employee now, because I haven't worked for anyone for, 20 years. But it's something about building something, and it's not even a legacy. I think it's just kind of, being part of something that, it's not even, I'd like to say it's not, I'm not that altruistic, but something about creating, something from scratch that's yours, that you own, and leaving that in the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it's part of kind of human creativity. It's just a different form, entrepreneurship, it strikes me. Let me ask you about building a
Yeah.
business in the age of social media. I mean, it's building a business now is very different, to perhaps 20, 30, 40 years ago. I mean, what's your take on how to do that? I mean, how do you feel about building a business when inevitably you're under a lot of scrutiny?
Yeah, look, it's one of those ones. I think you can, it's a little bit like the AI thing, you can choose to stay out of it and on the outer. But honestly, it just means you'll kind of be left behind. And it just, I always think it's like, don't try and fight it. It's the same thing with AI. There's no point in fighting it. If you want to be part of the game, then you've got to lean in. And so, but then it's about choosing what channel is right for you as well as your business. For us, it's LinkedIn. For me, it's LinkedIn. I tried Instagram. I mean, TikTok, I was never going to do, but and I'm not a video person. Like, I can do these kind of conversations, but those people that can do the kind of video, lives all the time and all of that's not my medium. So I think it's also about finding what's comfortable for you, and finding your voice. So it makes it easy then. I know now we can see a lot of, speaking of AI generated content, but that gets found out very quickly. So, it's even just choosing 1, 2, 3 topics, it's easy for you to write about. It's easy for you to get passionate about. And then it doesn't feel hard. You're not having to think about every word. It just flows. And then, of course, the more that you can put your voice in there, then it feels authentic. And I think now more than ever, people are just looking for anything that sounds human
Yeah, yeah.
and unique.
Yeah. Let me ask you about I mean a lot of my friends say to me, building a business is a bit like riding a roller coaster. You have good days, you have bad days, you have lots of stuff in between. I mean, what is it that, if you like, motivates you to get out of bed every day and keep riding that roller coaster? Because it's not always fun, is it?
It's so funny. I'm part of 2 or 3 business men peer groups, and they're huge help. So my one this morning, Level Up, was with New Zealand founders, and we were having this conversation today, actually going, being an entrepreneur and a founder is a life of extremes, because you can have exactly that. Like, if you have a scale of 1 to 5, sometimes you can be a 5 and a 1 on the same day. And so it's definitely not for the faint-hearted. And I think it comes back to, I remember, when you first set up a business and you're like, oh, you've got to have a vision and a mission and a purpose, and you've got to write it all down. And, I'm still trying to wordsmith mine, but I do believe what I'm doing is important, and I am having a positive impact, not only on the researchers that, we can get work to, and then they can, it's that kind of exponential effect, but also the brands that we work with, and the products that we help launch into market or into other markets. So I love that part of it. I love being an entrepreneur, and having a voice. And yeah, I don't have many hobbies. So I don't know what else I'd be doing. But it's usually pretty easy for me to get out of bed. But it's interesting. I will reflect. I've been through a bit of a personal, tough year this year. And I remember going to the GP, and so she was like, oh, would you like me to write you like a sick note, so that you can have, a couple of weeks or a week off work? And I was like, oh, I don't think my boss would accept it, i.e. me. And it's like, we don't get sick days. We don't get to hide under a duvet if things get tough. There's no one going to save you. You have to just keep going, and it's really, really hard sometimes. So I can see why a lot of startups fail. It's sometimes not because the business didn't work or the product or service didn't sell. Sometimes it just gets too hard, and people go, you know what, it's not for me, and that's okay. It's
And
okay.
you mentioned how hard it is. I mean, pretty much all the entrepreneurs I've spoken to would say that. One or two that find it easy, but most people would say it's a bit of a struggle. I mean, tell me about how tell me about the hard miles. I mean, how do you keep it together mentally when you have, periods when things don't go well? I mean, how do how do you deal with that mentally?
Yeah, that's taken practice. That's taken years. Particularly with the level of risk, because it's not just your own risk, it's your staff, it's your family, the other day I was like over my overdraft, and I was like, I didn't know you could go over your overdraft. And so I'm Googling going, is that okay? And anyway, it was, I just got a fine, but, or, fees. But you max out your credit cards, you're doing anything you can. You don't pay yourself, like anything you can to keep that business alive. And you've got to swallow dignity sometimes, pride, or pride and dignity. You've got to almost beg sometimes, or get payment plans with suppliers, or kind of talk to your staff going, can I pay? So there's just a lot of times where you just got to dig deep and have that self-belief that what you're doing is important, that you show up. And I think it's funny when people talk about being in business, for the money and, the get rich quick sort of thing. And I think any real entrepreneur out there just laughs inside because they're like,
Most of it's
if you
nonsense,
were
isn't it?
doing it for the money, we're like the lowest paid people. So if you looked at our hourly rate, it's like $5.
Yeah, yeah.
So no, we're not in it for the money. And I don't think if you were, you could handle the lows because yeah, it's years and years. Like I've just got a colleague who's just gone through a funding round, and oh my gosh, I mean, that's probably taking years off her life, because even trying to get funding's hard. Yeah, I know. You realize when you talk to entrepreneurs, they don't make it sound very fun sometimes, but we still turn up.
For some strange reason, it becomes addictive as well, which I think is the other side.
Oh,
Hard, but addictive. And you think, well, how can that be? But
I honestly, exactly. And it's funny, I say I'm not a serial entrepreneur, but in fact, this is my second business. I had a freelance business, but it's my second business. There might be a third, I'm not sure. But I think it's because, I remember I did this AI Advantage boot camp, the Tony Robbins, and I love Tony Robbins. And one of the guys, Dean Gracioso, his business partner, and kind of going, oh, well, why are you doing this? Like, you could have retired years ago. And he's like, well, what on earth am I going to do in retirement? Like, I've got all this, I've still got things to do. So I think that's it. No, entrepreneurs probably aren't that great at sitting still. And, our form of retirement is reading business books or relaxing. My mum comes and stays with me and she's like, oh, what have you got to read? And it's like shelves of personal development, Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, Robin Sharma, and business books. I'm like, oh, sorry, you have to go to the book library.
yeah, no, I mean, I think it's that thing about not retiring and not knowing what to do with yourself is certainly when I talk to entrepreneurs, I mean, because I'm at the the older end of that world. I mean, lots of people are saying, I don't know what I'm going to do if I haven't got a business to keep me occupied, and a lot of people you see sell businesses and then start another one, and you think, well, you just made a, why on earth would you want to subject yourself to it again?
Yeah.
But it's addictive, isn't it? Let me just ask you about working with others. I mean, I always think that very successful entrepreneurs, the key, when you look at what they do, the key is that they're able to get people to go with them. I mean, you could perhaps describe that as leadership, perhaps, however people want to describe it. They're able to work with others and to get people to go with them on the journey. I mean, what's your take on getting the right people on the bus? I mean, you've got people all over the place and you manage people remotely as well. So how do you get the right people on your bus, for want of a better way of describing it?
Yeah, and we've certainly had stops and starts on that. And I found it's those that probably can work independently. And we're pretty upfront when we say to people, look, if you're coming here to, dare I say it, learn, but, be trained or have a progression path or even HR, we're not for you. It's really, here's the job description. You almost have to write it yourself. I've seen what you've done in the past. We've got ex, head of insights for Atlassian, ex head of insights for Disney APAC, ex or current insights, it's Zero who works, as one of our clients. And, we've got some amazing people in and around us, and they're professionals. I go, gosh, you've done, incredible things in your career. What on earth am I going to be sitting here saying, oh, well, you need to follow this and do this? But I think it's also working out how people work best. We were remote first from day one, but this year I actually got an office. And I just thought, well, look, I'll create a place that if people want to come in and have a physical space, whiteboard. But, we've got one that, she'll come in once a fortnight, whereas others are in 2 or 3 days a week. And rather than mandating what you have to do, it's like, okay, what works best for you? And as you said, we've got a team in the Philippines. Couple probably need a bit more structure than others, but we work with Slack. We're a Google company, so it's all very collaborative, transparent. But I've certainly seen with the researchers that have been successful and that have worked with us over many years, that self-determination, I guess, and just autonomy. They don't need to be handheld. They're professionals. They're very good at what they do. And they show up, and they need direction, but yeah, as I said, not hand holding. So we've got a pretty good formula now.
Yeah. And how do you, I mean, one of the things I think is interesting about the kind of remote team thing is, I mean, the points you've just made about giving people appropriate levels of autonomy and all the rest of it. The flip side to the coin is how do you make sure you get the right things done? I mean, I'm a great believer that people are your biggest asset, but only if they're doing the right things. They're not a great asset if they're doing the wrong things. I mean, that often, well, I've seen it endanger the company actually. But so how do you get people focused on the right stuff when you don't have a lot of contact, when they've got a lot of autonomy? And what's the trick around that?
Do a lot of briefings. So as part of our process, we'll have a client kickoff. And so, on some projects, we could have 6 researchers from 5 countries working on a project. And, we bring everyone together at the start. And so we're all on a call so that everyone's hearing the same thing. They've got an opportunity to ask any questions. So it's not coming secondhand. They understand the research objectives, but they also understand what success looks like for the client, so that even when they're in the field, and that's actually talking to the people or managing the field work and writing up the report, they know what the end goal is for that project, or what success looks like for that client or their stakeholders. And that's probably why we're, again, so collaborative and so transparent. They'll see our proposal. As I said, we're on a Slack channel where we're talking back and forth. But we also want them to put their own stamp on things. So, as I said, autonomy is, one of our values, and independence. So their experience, we want that to shine through. We don't ever say, oh, they're, employed by Insights-Exchange. We like, no, they're independent. And because of that, you're getting this incredible person with all this variety of experience. But yeah, they might do things, slightly differently to what you've had in a previous project, but that's okay. So I guess it's all about trusting them, but communication and briefing.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I mean, it's what you're describing is actually good project management stuff. Actually, it seems to me. Um, Let me ask you about. I mean, you're in a whole range of different markets. I mean, let me ask you about kind of market entry. How do you decide which markets to go into? How do you approach those markets? I mean, what's your take on that component, the kind of global expansion process? I mean, give us your thoughts around that.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, you sort of take the opportunities as they come, whereas now I'm being a little bit more directed, or focused, I should say. So the US is, a big focus for us, for a few reasons. One, the market research industry. So our sector, it's mature in the US. So they've been doing it for a very long time. And also understand, it's kind of baked into a lot of processes, but it can also be quite costly, particularly for brands entering the US, with foreign exchange, probably more so down here with our dollar. So we're trying to find a way to offer US market research using locals, but managed from down in Australia. So that way you can take advantage of the lower cost of sale, and it just makes it accessible. Otherwise, they can't do research. Same with China. Doing market research in China is very expensive, and so we've done a few projects where we'll use Mandarin speakers outside of China. They go back and forth, but at least then you're again able to pay in kind of local currency, so you're still getting that in-market cultural knowledge, but yeah, can take advantage. So we try and find markets where it's expensive to do for outside brands, and where the need is greatest. And so for now, the US and of course China, particularly in our region, that's one of the key export markets. India will be another emerging market for us. And again, being able to understand how locals, make decisions and buy products. It's not a market that you can just pick up something from Australia or the UK and take your entire marketing campaign and roll it out, in India or China. It's just not going to work.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the kind of competitive issues. So, I mean, I don't know, but there are lots of market research companies in China. There are lots in India. There are lots in Australia. There are lots in the US. I mean, what is it about what you do and the way you do it that gives you a competitive edge? What are your, if you like, distinctive capabilities? What are the things that make your operation distinct from the kind of competitors that are out there?
Yeah, there's a few reasons. So one, our global scale. So to match the number of countries that we can do research, you pretty much would only find those in a Kantar or an Ipsos. And so then, of course, you're also paying Kantar and Ipsos prices. So we've kind of done the hard work in finding researchers all over, and being able to bring them all together as one. So we operate like a global company, but have the agility, of a boutique. The other one is around, I would say, the experience. So our researchers, you can't actually find them in agencies. They've left agencies for a reason, or they've left client side for a reason. So they're kind of often at a stage of life, as I said, it might be 15 years on, or they've got a family, and wanted to go independent and have that flexibility. So finding them is hard. So we go looking for them and provide them a bridge, if you like, from full-time agency work or client work into the world of freelance, and kind of almost a safety net. Now, these people they're incredible researchers with incredible knowledge, but want to stay, independent. So accessing that type of talent would be number 2. And 3 is really the speed at which we can put something together. So being a distributed network, but managed, locally, we kind of run that follow the sun model. So, we literally can do something in 24/7 and, get something into field, within a day, if required. So a lot of the bigger agencies, it's just difficult because, of course, there's a lot of layers, a lot of red tape that you've got to go through, with any kind of global organization. So that speed and agility has really helped us.
Yeah, and it's an interesting illustration of the way businesses are changing, I think. I mean, those old models, I mean, if you like, the legacy world of those big companies, I mean, that's seriously under attack at the moment by people like yourselves, isn't it? Who are saying we can use the technology to do things in faster and better, actually. That's the truth of the matter. And has your business evolved itself as you've gone into multiple markets? I mean, I know you've been at this a little while. I mean, is it different now to the way it was when you started?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think the model's different. And often I reflect back on that, even when I'm writing, rewriting the vision, I'm like, oh gosh, there's still a lot of that sort of core, sort of essence of it. But I think we have matured. So, I mean, my team will laugh when I say our systems have matured, but they have matured. And we've grown up. We push back. It's funny because I was going to unblur, but I know we were going to talk about decision making later on, and yeah, we've got a lot better at that in terms of staying in our lane. So I think probably knowing what we're really good at and what we just go, you know what, let's leave that either for the big guys or for specialist agencies. There's shopper intelligence or, brand tracking at scale. There's a great company called Tracksuit. So there's companies that specialize in certain things. And so you're like, great, there's enough for everybody. So, it's probably taken us some time to work out, where our sweet spot is. And now we're just like, right, let's scale that up and get it out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting lesson, that, isn't it? Working out what you're good at and where the sweet spot is. Those things take time. That you can't just click your fingers and say it's this. It doesn't work that way, does it? You have to figure that out. And I think that's one of the interesting things about successful entrepreneurs is they've figured that out. That's the thing, I think. Let me ask you about that kind of learning process, though. So, I mean, what would you attribute your success to? I mean, we've talked about finding the sweet spot. We've talked about knowing what you're good at. I mean, what else would you attribute the success of the business to? Are there any particular things?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things. So one around that, I say resilience, but we do talk about that in terms of just sticking with it. And was it been doing the hard things like. Honestly, I think sometimes there's no secret magic sauce. It's actually just stickability. Keep showing up.
Yeah.
And time heals all. I think failures, we've had some really backs against the wall. I had a seed investor that went horribly wrong and had to buy her out. Due to a mismatch. So, a huge lesson in terms of, my attitude to funding. So we've bootstrapped since then. I finance through debt because I want to control my process. I I think stay, like I mentioned about staying in your own lane. So learning what your own lane is, and you can only do that through getting things wrong, the classic thing, learning the hard way. I mean, it sounds so boring and kind of read in a business book, but those lessons are, written for a reason because they're true. And I think admitting your failures as well. It's funny because, I listen to a lot of those, the entrepreneur podcasts and all that. And back in the day, it's got better now, but back in the day, it was all just the unicorns, the magic success, and, the classic overnight success. And, when you're in it, you're like, well, why is it taking so long? And
Yeah.
then you realize, no, it was never an overnight success. It just, they either had many iterations or, it just isn't sexy to talk about the 20 years prior that they were,
Yeah.
working at it.
You mentioned decision making a moment ago. Let me just talk about that because on the one hand, some people would say success is the outcome of making good decisions, right? And there's a logic to that, isn't there? On the other hand, people would say success is the outcome of learning very quickly what doesn't work, right? I mean, where would you see yourself on that spectrum, and how do you manage to cut? I mean, how do you work out how to cut through all the noise and work out what to focus on? And how do you get your team on board with those things, given that they're all over the place?
Yes. No, I'm laughing because my team always laugh at it. So new shiny things. So I love a new shiny thing, and I get distracted quite quickly by that. So I'm having to learn about discipline and staying focused. But with decision making, I've probably often made quick decisions, and here I am talking. I need to be pro data, but sometimes there is something to be said for gut feel, and doing what feels right. And I think as a founder, when you're that close to your business, you kind of do know because you're so you're so linked to it, that if it feels right for you, then it probably is going to be, right for your business and for your customers and for the type of business you want it to be. But you don't always get it right. And that comes back to bite you. And I don't know, sometimes you just got to take responsibility for it. Like I've made some really bad decisions, and that's cost us money. And couple at the moment where, I'm still paying for it. And you kick yourself and you're sort of like, oh, but that's just part of nobody, like even if you went to business school, I didn't go to business school, I don't have an MBA. So nobody teaches you how to be a founder. Like nobody teaches you how to run a business. And it's even theoretical at an MBA. The only way you're going to learn is by making those stuff ups and bad decisions. And it's okay because then you don't do it again. And if you keep doing it, well, then that's on you. But as long as you learn from it, own it. And I think own it. You've got to own it. You can't pass the buck. That's not fair. Ultimately, you're the business owner.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting your point about not going to business school. I mean, I'm not sure personally. I'm not sure business schools are the best places to learn about business. And the reason I say that, I'm not anti-business school, but the reason I say that is that the theory is fine. But actually, what really matters is skills, learning how to do things. I mean, you don't need vast quantities of knowledge to build a business, but you do need quite well-developed skills. You need skills in managing people, skills in managing clients, skills in managing money. It's much more skill-based than knowledge-based, if you get my drift. And I think, as your point a second ago is that you learn that by doing. I mean, I'm a huge believer that that is absolutely true. Let me ask you about that then. So if you were to go back to square one, what would you do differently this time round if you could start again?
Well, I know that, that I'm laughing because I finished maths so in New Zealand it was fifth form back in the day, and I just didn't really like it. And numbers, money's never been like a core driver of mine, and I can always make more of it. But if I did it again, oh my gosh, I would know my numbers deeply, and I would be looking at spreadsheets and cash flow every day, every week. I'd be forecasting, even just like at the moment, I've gone old school. Like I have zero accounting software, but I've got old school. I have just Excel spreadsheet, and it's a weekly cash flow of just in and out, and what's coming in, what bills, and when am I going to run out? Like, what's my runway? And I used to just put my head in the sand for months sometimes, and just not so much hope it didn't go away. I just didn't really think about it. And, money came in and I paid some bills, and yeah, there was no method. So that would be the number one thing I would do differently from day one, is lean in, really lean into the numbers, and don't run from those. The other one I would do from the start is, if you don't have that skill already, and I didn't, so boundary setting, it's something that I am still learning today. But, when we talk about negotiation or pushing back on clients, in our world, it's scope creep, or owning, like when you set your rates, kind of going, no, these are my rates, and I'm worth it. That takes... that's a learned skill. Like, I don't, some rare people have it, that's fantastic, but otherwise, you've really got to do some work on that, because that will set you up for success in terms of not only clients but team, your teammates, and prospects and partners. It's right through. So know your numbers and setting boundaries.
Yeah. Wise words, I suspect. One last question. In terms of looking forward, I mean, it's a pretty interesting environment at the moment, I think. I mean, what exciting stuff have you got on the horizon? What sort of stuff are you getting, interested in at the moment?
Yeah, I'm excited about 2026. For us, like many industries, AI is front and center. But what I'm excited about is, we're working on kind of that AI first workflow. So, this is the old way, how would you do it with AI? But then what our focus is, primarily, we're a human insight company. So it's all about keeping, when we say keeping human in the loop, and we really mean that. There's a lot of talk about synthetic data in our industry. And, again, it comes back to, if you don't understand, humans at their core, how can a brand grow? How can you create a campaign that resonates with people? I can't imagine that Cadbury would create, an ad campaign with a gorilla playing drums, to a Phil Collins song, like, through ChatGPT. Like, it just, you know what I mean? Like, it's that being brave. And I think for us, yes, we want to go faster. We want to do, I don't want to hire more people. I want to grow with the team we have, using AI and helping other businesses, with that as well. But at our core, it will be what really, I actually want to say I'm excited, because I think human insight is going to become more important than ever before in this age of AI, when people are looking for what is real, what is true, what is authentic, and what is human. And we're going to be front and center for that, evolution.
I think whichever way it shakes down, it's going to be an interesting few years, would be my take on it.
Oh, yeah. It's I was saying, I went to a couple of events the last few weeks, and it's felt this sort of sense of urgency that, come on, people, you've got to get on board. You've got to get on board. And yeah, I haven't felt that before with other tech waves. So yeah, I think we know it's game changing, but probably in our world, again, that human impact, and that's kind of what we're going to be working on next year is what is that human impact and how are we going to prepare for that? And I'll start going down rabbit holes of universal incomes and 4-day work weeks, but that might be another podcast.
Well, I'd certainly be interested in hearing those ideas at some point if you want to talk about them. So, anyway, Nichola, thank you for taking time out to share that story. I mean, absolutely fascinating, actually, and a really interesting area, actually. I mean, in terms, particularly, given what's happening with AI and given the importance of the kind of human connection, seeing how that shakes down over the next few years, I think is going to be really interesting and possibly quite profound, actually. I mean, because it's at the heart of the challenge, isn't it? We've got technology that does stuff, but you still, people are the creative bits. So it's going to be an interesting few years. So thank you for sort of talking us through your perspective on that. I mean, incredibly valuable and very insightful. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. That's
Cheers.
brilliant.
See you soon, Nichola. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye, Paul.